Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. Boom. Sourcery by Terry Pratchett. So, that's where we are in the Discworld, which apparently we're reviewing in publication order. Now, if you go to the Wikipedia page for Discworld, there's actually a really great graphic of all the stories and the plot lines in the Discworld and how they interconnect. And I believe Sourcery is actually where the author thinks you should start the series, which to me is really weird. But I can kind of see it, that like the first, I don't know, yeah, I can see isolating the first 4 books off on their own, as something else. But, here is the thing about, first off, I want to read the dedication here. Many years ago, I saw in Bath a very large American lady towing a huge tartan suitcase very fast on little ratty wheels, which caught in the pavement cracks and generally gave it a life of its own. At that moment, the luggage was born, many thanks to that lady and everyone else in places like Power Cable, Nebraska, who didn't get nearly enough encouragement. This book does not contain a map. Please feel free to draw your own. I assume the NEB abbreviation is Nebraska. I don't know much about English geography. Okay, so one of the things about Sourcery that's important is this is the first continuation book. So, Color of Magic and Light Fantastic are, book and sequel. And then we jump to Witches plot lines, and then we jump to Death plot lines. This goes back to Rincewind. So this is the first book that starts a continuous series. Like there are Rincewind books. The one after this is Eric, I think. Yeah, the next Rincewind book would be Eric. And then after that, I don't even remember. I can't remember the names. I have read them. I think I'm coming up on like my 5th Rincewind book or something. But all right, let's read the back cover. There was an 8th son of an 8th son. He was, quite naturally, a wizard, and there it should have ended. However, for reasons we better not go into, he had 7 sons, and then he had an 8th son, a wizard squared, a source of magic, a sorcerer, right? Because source, let's spell like source with R-I or R-Y at the end. Now, so the idea is that these things shouldn't happen, that wizards in the Discworld universe are celibate. This book serves as a partial explanation of why that is. But what happens is, so this man who has had this 8th son or whatever is, when he dies, he makes he decides to, there's a great scene in the beginning where he's talking to Death and he decides to control his son's fate with certain caveats, and what he becomes is a vengeful spirit in the staff he passes on to his son. And what he's out for is revenge on the wizarding community that threw him away because he fell in love with a woman and decided to have a family, which is against the wizard's rules or whatever. That's not the point. The point is that this little kid, guided by this incredibly angry spirit of his father, becomes the most powerful wizard imaginable, and is goaded into and destined to take on the wizarding establishment of Unseen University in Ankh-Morpork. So I don't know how to pronounce any. I never look up how to pronounce things in here. I've made it my own pronunciations. So if I think the Watch has confirmed to me that it's actually Ankh-Morpork, but yeah. So if I pronounce something wrong and you cringe a little, I'm sorry about that. Okay. So where we are in the story, where we're going to pick up to read, is so all the stuff has happened, and the kid's destiny is to wear the hat of head chancellor for Unseen University. And that hat has conspired to escape from being worn by this kid, because the hat is sentient. Because, of course, the hat is sentient. Of course it is. Discworld. In fact, the hat had no intention of letting anything happen to it and was currently hurrying towards the mended drum under the arm of a rather puzzled, black-clad thief. The thief, as will become apparent, was a special type of thief. This thief was an artist of theft. Other thieves merely stole everything that was not nailed down, but these thieves stole the nails as well. This thief had scandalized Ankh by taking a particular interest in stealing with astonishing success, things that were in fact not only nailed down, but also guarded by keen-eyed guards in inaccessible strong rooms. There are artists that will paint an entire chapel ceiling. This was the kind of thief that could steal it. This particular thief was credited with stealing the jeweled disemboweling knife from the temple of Offler, the crocodile god, during the middle of evensong, and the silver shoes from the patrician's finest racehorse while it was in the process of winning a race. When Gritolor Mimsy, vice president of the Thieves' Guild, was jostled in the marketplace and then found on returning home that a freshly stolen handful of diamonds had vanished from their place of concealment, he knew who to blame. This was because Gritolor had swallowed the jewels for safekeeping. This was the type of thief that could steal the initiative, the moment, and the words right out of your mouth. However, it was the first time it had stolen something that not only asked it to, in a low but authoritative voice, but gave precise and somehow unarguable instructions about how it was to be disposed of. It was that cusp of the night that marks the turning point of Ankh-Morpork's busy day, when those who make their living under the sun are resting after their labors, and those who turn an honest dollar by the cold light of the moon are just getting up the energy to go to work. The day had, in fact, reached the gentle point when it was too late for housebreaking and too early for burglary. Rincewind sat alone in the crowded, smoky room and didn't take much notice when a shadow passed over the table and a sinister figure sat down opposite him. There was nothing very remarkable about sinister figures in this place. The Drum jealously guarded its reputation as the most stylishly disreputable tavern in Ankh-Morpork, and the big troll that now guarded the door carefully vetted customers for suitability in the way of black cloaks, glowing eyes, magic swords, and so forth. Rincewind never found out what he did to the failures. Perhaps he ate them. When the figure spoke, its husky voice came from the depth of a black velvet hood lined with fur. "Psst," it said. "Not very," said Rincewind, who was in a state of mind where he couldn't resist it, "but I'm working on it." "I'm looking for a wizard," said the voice. It sounded hoarse, with the effort of disguising itself, but again, this was nothing unusual in the Drum. "Any wizard in particular?" Rincewind said guardedly. "People get into trouble this way." "One with a keen sense of tradition who would not mind taking risks for high reward," said another voice. It appeared to be coming from a round black leather box under the stranger's arm. "Ah," said Rincewind, "that narrows it down a bit, then. Does this involve a perilous journey into unknown and probably dangerous lands?" "It does, as a matter of fact." "Encounters with exotic creatures?" Rincewind smiled. "Could be." "Almost certain death?" "Almost certainly." Rincewind nodded and picked up his hat. "Well, I wish you every success in your search," he said. "I'd help you myself, only I'm not going to." "What?" "Sorry, I don't know why, but the prospect of certain death in unknown lands and the claws of exotic monsters isn't for me. I've tried it, and I couldn't get the hang of it. Each to their own, that's what I say. And I was cut out for boredom." He waved his hand on his head and stood up a little unsteadily. He'd reached the foot of the steps leading up into the street when a voice behind him said, "A real wizard would have accepted." He could have kept going. He could have walked up the stairs, out into the street, got a pizza at the Clashian Takeaway in Snig's Alley, and gone to bed. History would have been totally changed, and in fact, would also have been considerably shorter, but he would have got a good night's sleep, although, of course, it would have been on the floor. The future held its breath, waiting for Rincewind to walk away. He didn't do this for 3 reasons. One was alcohol. One was the tiny flame of pride that flickers in the heart of even the most careful cowards. But the third was the voice. It was beautiful. It sounded like wild silk looks. Okay, so, yeah, and the reason I read that passage is because Rincewind and the Thief really steal the show in this novel. Now, as Sourcery as a Discworld novel, it's an early Discworld novel, right? We're still in the early Discworld novels. We haven't really established the character casts and and I know we're 5 novels in, and at this point you're going, dude's still writing early novels, what's keeping him going? The answer is, either Terry Pratchett is the most persistent human being on the face of the earth, although, again, Mort's like a masterpiece. But Sourcery is a good novel. Like, I know I kind of rolled my eyes at the third novel in the Discworld series, but Sourcery kind of holds its own. It's very short. For a Discworld novel, this is tiny. It is 270 pages. So Terry Pratchett's reading is always easy. These are always quick books. You are never going to find a Discworld book that is going to make you pull out a thesaurus or a dictionary of synonyms or an actual dictionary or Google words. At least not many of them. It really establishes a theory, not a theory. It establishes what's going to happen next in the Discworld, where you start to see these kind of plot lines be cemented in place. And it takes a while to get around to some of them. Like, we're not going to hit another death book until book 11. But in short order here, we're going to talk about the second book in the Witches series. We're going to talk about the first City Guard book, or the first Night Watch book, and or City Watch. I think it's City Watch. The first City Watch book, and then we'll be talking about the second Death book. And although there will be some different kind of things that, like plot lines that establish themselves, what we're going to start to see is that first off, all of these things become very interconnected. So, you know, City Watch characters will start appearing in other places, and you know, we get these Terry Pratchett is building a world that every character inhabits at the same time. That these novels are contemporary and sequential. So this becomes important. Like, when Terry Pratchett tells you to start at Sourcery, that may be because you can disregard the first four books. But after that, it becomes problematic. Like, you need to know what happens at the end of Sourcery to get into Eric. Like, what happens in Eric doesn't make sense without Sourcery. So, and the same thing kind of happens. Like, the third Witches book is one of my favorite books in the series. But the fourth Witches book literally starts at the end of it. I mean, they are direct sequels with 3 or 4 books in between them. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like 2. So, so that really this is really where you get in for the long haul, right? If you've made it to Sourcery, and you're going to read Sourcery, which, again, out of the books we're going to talk about in the next, it holds its own. I mean, like, the next 4 books all kind of fit really well, all have about the same quality level, and they're devoted to establishing, is really what it comes down to. Is like, Pratchett does not feel free at this point to write books that are kind of these gigantic flourishes, because he's establishing. Right, we're learning who Rincewind really is, and what his character is like, and we're really learning who the witches are, and we're really going to learn who the City Watch is. And once we've established those things, then we can start doing things. The genius of Pratchett is this, right? Is Pratchett gives you an amazing cast of characters. And this is super important. And it's the thing about Pratchett that keeps me reading him. He gives you an amazing cast of characters, and then, like, he gives you jokes that seem like the most horrible kind of obvious dad jokes that somehow fit perfectly with characters he's been building up for 4 novels. And you're like, how do you work these things in, or these weird logical turns that only work because we know so much about Rincewind, right? Or so much about, like, Nanny Ogg. And, like, it's amazing. It's an amazing bit of craftsmanship that Pratchett can enter himself into his own world and find things that just kind of, like, if he held them up in a fresh novel, if the first novel of Discworld were filled with these things, you'd be like, this guy's just all cliched and dumb ideas, but, like, the way he works them together just becomes, like, because you've met these characters and you know them, and the things that are going on make such perfect sense, everything works on a level that nobody else could have pulled off without this kind of structure. It becomes so intricately beautiful the way Pratchett built a world, a genuinely funny and interesting world. And so at some point, the Discworld novels have a kind of momentum of their own, where it doesn't even matter anymore. It's like, well, is the Weird Sisters a good book? It doesn't matter, you're invested. Like, you're going to plow through the bad books. Like, I will still kind of talk about them, But Discworld is the thing you're reading. Like, if you're reading Discworld and you're 5 books in, you're probably reading Discworld. I'm at book 20. I'm not stopping. Like, so when we come back, Weird Sisters. Bye, everybody.